My teenage granddaughter made fun of my arthritis. Her mom just stood there and watched. She snatched the walking stick right out of my hand and started hobbling around the living room, mocking the way I walked. Her mother just leaned against the doorway with a smirk. My name is Joanne Callister. I'm 67, and I live just outside Columbus, Ohio. There comes a time in your life when you stop expecting people to surprise you until someone does in the worst way possible. I raised a daughter with everything I had, only to watch her raise a teenager who thinks mocking pain is comedy. It wasn't just arthritis, it was humiliation. The betrayal didn't hurt my joints, it tore into my heart. If this story resonates with your soul, hit the subscribe button and let me know which country you're watching from in the comments. Let's see how far the respect for elders still reaches. The phone rang on a quiet Tuesday morning, the kind of crisp Ohio day that made my joints ache just a little more. I shuffled to the kitchen, my cane clicking against the hardwood, and picked up the receiver. It was Melissa, my daughter, her voice bright but edged with something I couldn't quite place. "Mom, hey, Kaylee and I need a favor. Our place is getting some repairs. Plumbing, you know how it is. Can we crash with you for a week or so?" I leaned against the counter, my free hand rubbing my sore wrist. Melissa hadn't called in months, not since Christmas, and even then it was a quick chat, all surface. But family's family, and my spare room was always ready. "Of course, honey," I said, a smile creeping into my voice. "It'll be nice to have you both here." "Great, we'll be there tomorrow. Love you, Mom." She hung up before I could ask more, leaving me staring at the phone. I pictured Kaylee, my 16-year-old granddaughter, all sharp eyes and quick wit. She'd been a sweet kid, always drawing me pictures, but the last few years had changed her. Teenagers, I told myself. They grow out of it. Still, a flicker of unease settled in my chest, like a storm cloud on the horizon. The next day, I was in the living room, setting out fresh towels, when Melissa's SUV pulled into the driveway. Kaylee spilled out first, her earbuds dangling, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Melissa followed, her hair pulled back, her smile tired but warm. I opened the door, my cane steadying me, and hugged them both. "Welcome, you two. Come on in. I've got coffee cake in the kitchen." "Thanks, Mom," Melissa said, dropping her bags by the couch. Kaylee didn't look up from her phone, her thumbs flying over the screen. I caught her eye, hoping for a hello, but she just gave me a long, cool stare. As she brushed past to the guest room, I heard her mutter under her breath, "Didn't know dinosaurs still roam the earth." I froze, my hand tightening on my cane. The words were soft, meant to slip by, but they hit like a slap. I glanced at Melissa, expecting her to say something, anything, but she was busy unpacking, her back to me. My throat tightened, but I forced a smile. "She's just being a kid," I told myself. "Let it go." Still, that stare, that whisper, stuck with me, sharp and cold. Over the next few days, the house felt different with them here. Melissa was distracted, always on her phone or stepping outside for calls, saying it was work stuff. Kaylee, though, was everywhere, lounging on the couch, leaving dishes in the sink, her music blaring through her earbuds. I tried to connect, asking about school, her friends, but she'd just shrug or give me one-word answers. Fine. Whatever. I kept my patience, remembering how Melissa had been at that age. All moods and slammed doors. But this felt personal. By Friday, the tension was heavier. I was in the kitchen, chopping carrots for dinner, my hands slow and stiff from the arthritis. Kaylee wandered in, grabbing a soda from the fridge. "You need a machine to do that, Grandma?" she said, nodding at the knife. "Looks like a workout." I forced a laugh, though it felt brittle. "These hands have been through worse, sweetheart. They'll manage." She smirked, popping the soda can open. "Sure, if you say so." She sauntered out, but I heard her on the phone later, her voice carrying from the guest room. "Yeah, it's like living with a fossil." She shuffles around, groaning like she's gonna break. Hilarious. My knife paused mid-chop, the words slicing deeper than I'd expected. I stood there, the kitchen suddenly too quiet, my heart pounding. She was mocking me, my pain, my walk, the way I moved. I wanted to storm in, tell her to stop, but my feet stayed rooted. She's just a teenager, I thought, echoing Melissa's excuse, but it hurt. A raw, aching hurt that settled in my chest. That night, I was in the living room, the TV flickering with some old sitcom. My hands ached, and I fumbled with the remote, the buttons too small for my swollen fingers. Kaylee flopped onto the couch, her phone glowing. "Hey, Grandma," she said, her tone dripping with fake concern. "Need help turning the remote? Or should I call 911 in case your bones snap?" The laugh in her voice was sharp, meant to cut. I looked at her, hoping to see a hint of the sweet girl I'd known. But her eyes were cold, daring me to react. I turned to Melissa, who was leaning against the doorway, a glass of wine in her hand. "Melissa," I said, my voice steady but pleading. "She can't talk to me like that." Melissa shrugged, her lips curling into a half smile. "She's just being a teenager, Mom. Don't take it so seriously." The room went still, the TV's laugh track mocking the silence. I stared at my daughter, the woman I'd raised, waiting for her to correct Kaylee, to stand up for me. But she just sipped her wine, her eyes sliding away. My pride burned, but I swallowed it, forcing a nod. "Right," I said, my voice tight. "Just a teenager." I turned back to the TV, my fingers clenched around the remote, but my heart was breaking. Kaylee's smirk, Melissa's shrug, they weren't just careless, they were cruel, and they knew it. I thought of Kaylee's whisper, her dinosaur's jab, the way she'd laughed about my pain. And Melissa, my own daughter, standing by, letting it happen. The betrayal wasn't just Kaylee's, it was Melissa's too, her silence louder than any words. I went to bed early, claiming a headache, but sleep didn't come. I lay there, the house quiet, except for the faint hum of Kaylee's music down the hall. My mind raced, replaying every moment, the stare, the mockery, the shrug. Why was Kaylee so mean? Was it just teenage rebellion or something deeper? And Melissa, why didn't she care? I'd raised her to respect family, to stand up for what's right. Where had I gone wrong? I pulled out the small journal I kept by my bedside, jotting down the date, Kaylee's words, Melissa's reaction. It wasn't much, but it was a start. If this was who they were now, I needed to understand why. And if it got worse, I needed proof. Not just for me, but to remind myself I wasn't imagining the hurt. Kaylee's whisper echoed in my mind. Dinosaurs still roamed the earth. She thought I was weak, outdated, a joke. But I wasn't. I'd survived worse than arthritis, worse than mockery. And I wasn't going to let my own family break me. The next morning, I heard Kaylee on the phone again, her voice low but clear through the thin walls. "Yeah, she's so slow. It's pathetic. Mom says just ignore her." My pen froze over the journal, the words searing. Melissa was part of this, not just a bystander. The realization hit hard, a mix of anger and grief. I closed the journal, my resolve hardening. I'd give them a chance to change, to show respect, but I wasn't holding my breath. Something was wrong here, something deeper than a teenager's attitude or a mother's indifference. I didn't know what it was yet, but I'd find out, because if there's one thing I'd learned at 67, it's that pain doesn't just come from joints. It comes from the people you love most, and I wasn't going to let theirs win. I shut the journal with a snap, Kaylee's words, pathetic, slow, still burning in my mind. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, but it did little to warm the chill in my bones, a mix of arthritis and betrayal. Melissa's indifference, her casual shrug, as Kaylee mocked me, hurt worse than any joint pain. I'd raised her better, or so I thought. Now, hearing Kaylee say Melissa told her to just ignore me, I wasn't sure who my daughter was anymore, but I wasn't giving up. I'd watch, listen, and figure out what was driving this cruelty. Family or not, I deserved respect and answers. A few days later, I was alone in the house. Melissa had gone to run errands, and Kaylee was at a friend's, leaving an eerie quiet. I decided to tidy the guest room, more to keep my hands busy than anything else. My cane tapped the floor as I moved, picking up stray socks and smoothing the bedspread. The wastebasket by the desk was overflowing, tissues and candy wrappers spilling out. I sighed, grabbing it to empty, when something caught my eye, a scorched edge of paper, half buried under a soda can. I set the basket down, my curiosity piqued. The paper was part of an envelope, its edges blackened like someone had tried to burn it, but gave up. I fished it out, my fingers brushing ash, and turned it over. The address was clear: Melissa Callister, my daughter's name, in neat print. The return address was from a law firm in Columbus, Harrington and Associates. My heart thudded. Why would Melissa burn a letter? And why hide it? I glanced at the door, half expecting to hear her car in the driveway. But the house stayed silent. I sat on the bed, my hands trembling as I smoothed the envelope. It was torn, but I found another fragment in the basket, then another, each piece singed but legible. Like a puzzle, I pieced them together on the bedspread, my swollen fingers clumsy but determined. The letter inside was crumpled, parts charred, but enough remained to make sense of it. "Dear Ms. Callister," it began, "regarding the estate of Robert Callister." My breath caught. Robert, my ex-husband, Melissa's father, had died 2 years ago. We'd been divorced for decades, but I knew he'd done well for himself, some real estate investments that paid off. The letter continued, detailing a trust he'd left for Melissa, $150,000, a sum that made my eyes widen. But there was a condition, underlined in bold. The beneficiary must reside with her mother, Joanne Callister, for 30 consecutive days, verified by notarized documentation, or the funds will be donated to the Columbus Community Fund. I stared at the words, my pulse racing. 30 days. I counted backward. Melissa and Kaylee had been here for 10. The repairs at their house, the sudden visit after months of silence. It wasn't about family, it was about money. Melissa wasn't here because she wanted to be. She was here to check a box, to claim an inheritance. And Kaylee's cruelty, Melissa's indifference. Were they just biding their time, putting up with me for the payout? My hands shook as I gathered the fragments, tucking them into my journal. I felt sick, a mix of anger and heartbreak. I'd opened my home, baked their favorite coffee cake, ignored Kaylee's jabs, all because I thought they needed me. But it was a transaction, a cold calculation. The letter explained Melissa's distance, her shrugs. She didn't care because she didn't have to. I was just a means to an end. I stood, my cane wobbling as I steadied myself. The guest room felt smaller, the air heavier. I thought of Kaylee's dinosaur's whisper, her mocking laughter, Melissa's wineglass and smirk. Had they planned this together? Was Kaylee's meanness part of some act, or was she just following her mother's lead? And why burn the letter? Was Melissa afraid I'd find out, or was there more she was hiding? I moved to the living room, my journal clutched to my chest. The TV was off, the house still, but my mind was loud with questions. I wanted to confront Melissa, wave the letter in her face, demand why she'd lied. But something stopped me. If I showed my hand now, she might leave, take Kaylee, and spin some story to get the money anyway. No, I needed to be smart. I'd keep the letter hidden, keep watching, and see how far this went. If Melissa thought she could use me, she'd learn I wasn't the frail old woman she assumed. I sat in my recliner, the journal open, and added the letter's details, the law firm, the amount, the condition. I noted Melissa's late-night calls, Kaylee's phone conversations about ignoring me. Each word hardened my resolve. This wasn't just about money. It was about respect, about family, about the daughter I'd raised, turning my home into a stage for her greed. I didn't know what Melissa would do next, but I'd be ready. Because if there's one thing arthritis taught me, it's how to endure pain and how to fight through it. I closed the journal, the singed letter tucked inside, its words, $150,000, 30 days, searing my mind. Melissa's lie about repairs, Kaylee's cruel jabs, the burned envelope. It all pointed to one truth. My daughter and granddaughter were here for money, not love. The betrayal stung sharper than my arthritis, but I wasn't crumbling. I'd keep the letter hidden, watch their every move, and decide when to strike. Melissa thought I was just a hurdle to her inheritance. She'd soon learn I wasn't so easy to dismiss. The next few days were tense, the house heavy with unspoken truths. Melissa stayed distant, always on her phone or stepping out for errands, while Kaylee's snark grew bolder, her smirks cutting deeper. I kept my journal close, noting every detail. Melissa's hushed calls, Kaylee's eye rolls, the way they whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. I wanted to confront Melissa, demand why she'd used me, but I needed the right moment. Rushing in could push her away, and I wasn't ready to lose my chance at answers. That moment came on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Kaylee was out with friends, and Melissa was in the kitchen, scrolling on her laptop. I sat at the table, my cane resting against my chair, the journal in my lap like a shield. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. Melissa, why didn't you tell me about your father's will? Her fingers froze on the keyboard, her eyes snapping to mine. For a second, she looked caught, but then her face hardened, cold as stone. Because I knew you'd make everything difficult, she said, her voice sharp. Look, it's just a month, Mom. Don't be dramatic. I leaned forward, my heart pounding, but my gaze steady. So, you moved in here with your child just to secure money you think you deserve? That's what this is. Melissa's jaw tightened, but she didn't answer. She slammed her laptop shut, stood, and walked out, her footsteps echoing down the hall. The silence she left behind was louder than any words, confirming everything. She wasn't here for me. She was here for the payout. My own daughter, using my home, my trust, like a checkbox on a legal form. I scribbled her words in the journal, my pen shaking. The confrontation hadn't gone as planned, but it gave me clarity. Melissa wasn't sorry, and she wasn't stopping. I spent the next week wrestling with what to do. Part of me wanted to call the law firm, expose her scheme, but I didn't know enough about the will's terms. Could she still get the money if I kicked her out? Was there a loophole? I needed advice, maybe from someone at church who knew lawyers, but I couldn't act yet. Instead, I kept up the act, smiling at Kaylee's jabs, nodding at Melissa's excuses, while my journal grew thicker with their betrayals. Then came Thursday, the night of my book club. I'd been hosting the group for years, a handful of women from the neighborhood who loved a good novel and a glass of wine. It was my sanctuary, a chance to feel normal, respected. I'd spent the day baking lemon bars, setting out chairs, ignoring the ache in my hands. Melissa was out, but Kaylee was home, sprawled on the couch with her phone. "Big party, Grandma," she said, her tone mocking. "Hope you don't trip over your cane." I forced a smile, brushing it off. "Just some friends, sweetheart. You're welcome to join." She rolled her eyes and went back to her screen. I let it go, focusing on the evening ahead. My friends arrived at 7, their chatter filling the house with warmth. We talked about the latest mystery novel, laughed over old stories, and for a few hours, I felt like myself again. Not the fossil Kaylee saw, but Joanne, the woman who'd raised a daughter, survived a divorce, and kept going despite the pain. As the night wound down, I walked my friends to the door, my cane steady on the hardwood. They hugged me, promising to host next time, their voices bright. I was smiling, savoring the moment, when Kaylee's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Hey, Grandma, don't forget your cane, or maybe just ride a turtle next time." She was in the living room, hobbling exaggeratedly, one hand clutching an imaginary cane, her face twisted in a mocking grimace. She groaned with each step, mimicking my stiff walk, her laughter sharp and cruel. My friends froze, their gasps audible. Helen, the oldest, clutched her purse, her eyes wide with shock. "Joanne," she started, but I couldn't look at her. My face burned, my heart hammering as I stood there, rooted to the spot. Kaylee kept going, oblivious or uncaring, her performance growing louder. "Come on, Grandma, show us how you shuffle." She staggered, pretending to wince, and let out another laugh. The room felt like it was closing in, the air thick with humiliation. My friends stared, some whispering, others looking away, their pity worse than the mockery. I wanted to yell, to tell Kaylee to stop, but my throat was tight, my voice gone. I glanced at the doorway, hoping, praying, Melissa would appear, that she'd finally step in. But she wasn't there. Kaylee was alone, her cruelty all her own. My hand tightened on my cane, the wood biting into my palm. This wasn't just a teenager being funny. This was deliberate, a line crossed in front of people who respected me, who saw me as more than my pain. And Melissa, wherever she was, had let this happen, just like she'd let every other jab slide. I forced myself to move, turning to my friends. "Thank you for coming," I said, my voice shaky but firm. "I'll see you next week." They murmured goodbyes, their eyes soft with sympathy, and left, the door clicking shut behind them. Kaylee was still laughing, now sprawled on the couch, her phone back in her hand, like nothing had happened. I stood there, the journal burning a hole in my mind. The letter, Melissa's cold words, Kaylee's mockery. It was all connected. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect, or the lack of it, from the family I'd given everything to. I walked past Kaylee, ignoring her, and locked myself in my bedroom. I opened the journal, writing down every detail. The turtle jab, the gasps, the way my friends' faces had changed. My pen shook, but my resolve didn't. Kaylee had gone too far, and Melissa's silence was complicity. I didn't know if the will was the whole story, or if something else drove their cruelty, but I was done waiting for answers to fall into my lap. Tomorrow, I'd call Helen's son, a lawyer, and find out what the will really meant. I'd confront Melissa again, with the letter in hand, and I wouldn't let her walk away. Because if Kaylee thought she could humiliate me in my own home, and Melissa thought she could use me for a paycheck, they were about to meet the woman they'd underestimated. Arthritis might slow my steps, but it hadn't dulled my fight, and I was just getting started. Would you have kicked them out right then and there? Or waited to gather more truth first? Let me know in the comments, because what I did next shocked even me. The bedroom door clicked shut, sealing me off from Kaylee's lingering laughter in the living room. My hands trembled as I opened the journal. The memory of her turtle jab and my book club friends' gasps still raw. Their pitying looks burned worse than Kaylee's mockery. But Melissa's absence, her refusal to step in, cut deepest. The singed letter about the inheritance, Melissa's cold dismissal when I confronted her, and now Kaylee's public humiliation, all pointed to a truth I couldn't ignore. My daughter and granddaughter were using me, and respect was nowhere in their plan. But I wasn't the frail pushover they thought. I'd fight back, and I'd do it my way. I spent the night planning, my journal filling with every detail. Kaylee's performance, Melissa's shrugs, the will's 30-day condition. Helen's son, a lawyer, was my first call tomorrow, but I needed more than legal advice. I needed proof, hard, undeniable evidence of how they treated me. If Melissa thought she could coast through this for her father's money, she'd learn I wasn't just a checkbox. I'd make sure they faced the consequences, not just for the inheritance, but for the hurt they'd caused. The next morning, I waited until Melissa and Kaylee left for the day. Melissa muttering about work, and Kaylee slamming the door with her usual attitude. I sat at the kitchen table, my coffee cold, and dialed Harrington and Associates, the law firm from the burned letter. My heart thudded as the receptionist patched me through to a lawyer, Mr. Daniel Pierce. "I'm Joanne Callister," I said, my voice steady. "My ex-husband, Robert Callister, left a trust for our daughter, Melissa. I found a letter about it. I need to know the details." Mr. Pierce was polite, but cautious, asking for verification before pulling the file. "The trust stipulates that Melissa must reside with you for 30 consecutive days," he confirmed, echoing the letter. But then he added something new, something that made my breath catch. "There's an additional condition. The elderly parent, meaning you, Ms. Callister, must be treated with dignity and mutual respect during this period. Evidence of mistreatment, verified by the firm, voids the claim. The funds would then go to charity. I gripped the phone, my mind racing. Dignity and mutual respect. Kaylee's mockery, Melissa's indifference. None of it qualified. What counts as evidence? I asked, my pen poised over the journal. Documented instances of disrespect or mistreatment, he said. Recordings, witness statements, videos, anything clear and dated. We'd review it if you filed a formal complaint. I thanked him, my resolve hardening. The will wasn't just a condition, it was a weapon. Melissa and Kaylee had already given me plenty of ammunition, but I needed more, something the firm couldn't ignore. I wasn't just fighting for my pride, I was fighting to take away the prize they thought was theirs. I started that afternoon. My phone, an old model but reliable, had a voice recorder I'd never used. I tested it, speaking softly to check the clarity, then slipped it into my sweater pocket, the microphone just peeking out. I also found a small security camera I'd bought years ago after a neighborhood break-in, still in its box. It was simple, motion-activated, and could record to my laptop. I set it up in the hallway, angled to catch the living room doorway, where Melissa often took her calls. It felt sneaky, almost wrong, but Kaylee's laughter and Melissa's shrugs had erased my guilt. They'd crossed the line. Now I was drawing mine. That evening, Kaylee was in the living room, her feet on the coffee table, scrolling on her phone. I shuffled in, my cane tapping, and sat in my recliner, the phone in my pocket, already recording. Kaylee, I said, keeping my tone light, you seemed to have fun with my friends here last night. She snorted, not looking up. Yeah, real fun. You move like a sloth, Grandma. Ever think about a scooter? I forced a chuckle, though my chest tightened. These joints have stories, sweetheart. They've earned their pace. Whatever, she muttered, loud enough for the recorder. Bet you'd trip over a snail. Her laugh was sharp, cruel, and I knew the phone had caught it. I glanced at the hallway, where the camera's tiny light blinked faintly, hidden by a plant. If Melissa walked in, if she ignored this, I'd have that too. She did. Minutes later, her phone pressed to her ear. She leaned against the doorway, half listening to Kaylee's jab. Yeah, she's fine, she said into the phone, her voice low but clear. Just slow, you know? It's annoying, but we're stuck here a bit longer. She laughed, a cold sound, and walked out. My phone caught her words, and the camera caught her smirk, her casual dismissal of me. I sat still, my heart pounding, the evidence piling up. Over the next few days, I kept the recorder on whenever they were near. Kaylee didn't disappoint. Grandma, you creak louder than the floorboards, she said one morning, mimicking my stiff walk as I poured coffee. Melissa, sipping her own mug, just rolled her eyes and said, Kaylee, chill. But there was no weight behind it, no defense. The camera caught more. Melissa on the phone in the hallway muttering, she's so needy, it's exhausting, can't wait to be done with this. Each clip, each word, went into a folder on my laptop, dated and labeled, a digital record of their disrespect. I also called Helen, my book club friend, and asked if she'd write a statement about Kaylee's mockery that night. She hesitated, then agreed, her voice soft with sympathy. Joanne, I'm so sorry. That was awful. I'll put it in writing. Her words, when they came, were clear. Joanne Callister mocked Joanne's arthritis in front of us, exaggerating her walk and making cruel comments. It was humiliating. I added it to my evidence, my journal now a battle plan. But as the days passed, doubt crept in. What if the firm didn't care? What if Melissa spun a story, claimed I was overreacting? And Kaylee, her cruelty felt personal, but was it just teenage rebellion? Or was she following Melissa's lead? The letter, the will, the money. It explained their presence, but not the depth of their disregard. Was there more to this? Something I hadn't seen? I pushed the thought aside, focusing on my plan. I'd send the evidence to Mr. Pierce soon, but I needed one more piece. Something so blatant, even Melissa couldn't deny it. I lay awake that night, the house quiet, except for Kaylee's music down the hall. My phone and camera were ready, my journal thick with proof. Melissa thought she could use me for her father's money. Kaylee thought she could mock me for laughs. But they'd underestimated me. I wasn't just a condition in a will. I was a woman who'd raised a daughter, survived pain, and learned to fight. They'd see that soon enough when I took their prize and showed them what dignity really meant. The journal lay open on my nightstand, its pages thick with evidence. Kaylee's cruel jabs, Melissa's dismissive mutterings, the burned letter about the inheritance. My phone and hallway camera had captured their disrespect in sharp detail, and Helen's written statement about Kaylee's book club mockery added weight to my case. I was ready to send it all to Mr. Pierce at Harrington and Associates, but I wanted one final piece, something undeniable to seal the deal. Melissa and Kaylee thought they could use me for Robert's money, but I was about to turn their game against them. They'd learn what happens when you underestimate a woman who's fought through pain her whole life. I called Mr. Pierce the next morning, my voice calm, despite the fire in my chest. I have evidence, I told him. Recordings, videos, a witness statement, proof Melissa and her daughter aren't meeting the will's condition of respect. Can you come by to review it? He agreed, scheduling a routine check-in for the following week to verify Melissa's residency. Bring everything you have, he said. If it's as clear as you say, the trust's ethical clause will apply. I hung up, my resolve ironclad. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about dignity, mine, and every elder who'd been dismissed by those they loved. I spent the days leading up to the visit, playing my part, smiling through Kaylee's snark and Melissa's coldness, my phone recording every barb. Kaylee didn't disappoint, sneering, "Grandma, you move like a rusty gate," as I reached for a glass. Melissa, overhearing, just sighed and said, "She's fine, Kaylee," her tone empty of care. The camera caught Melissa later, on the phone in the hallway, muttering, "I can't wait to get out of here. She's such a burden." Each clip strengthened my case, but it deepened the ache in my heart. This was my daughter, my granddaughter, and they saw me as nothing but an obstacle. The morning of Mr. Pierce's visit, I was up early, my hands aching as I set out coffee and cookies in the living room. Melissa was in the kitchen, scrolling on her phone, while Kaylee lounged on the couch, earbuds in. I'd told them a lawyer was coming to check on the house for the will, keeping it vague. Melissa shrugged, unbothered, but I caught a flicker of unease in her eyes. Good, let her wonder. Mr. Pierce arrived at 10, a tall man in a crisp suit, his briefcase in hand. I welcomed him in, my cane steady, and offered him a seat. Melissa joined us, her smile tight, while Kaylee stayed sprawled on the couch, barely glancing up. "Just a routine visit," Mr. Pierce said, opening his notebook. "To confirm you've been residing here with Ms. Callister, as per the trust's terms." Melissa nodded, all charm. "Of course, we've been here, helping Mom out. Right, Mom?" I smiled, my heart pounding. "Let's talk about that." I pulled my laptop from the side table, the folder of recordings and videos already open. "Mr. Pierce, I have something you should see. Proof of how I've been treated these past weeks." Melissa's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing. "What are you doing?" I ignored her, clicking play on the first video. The hallway camera footage filled the screen. Kaylee mimicking my walk, groaning exaggeratedly, her turtle jab echoing as my book club friends gasped. Then came the audio, Kaylee's voice clear. "You move like a rusty gate, Grandma." Another clip showed Melissa on the phone, calling me a burden, her laugh cold. Helen's statement, printed and handed to Mr. Pierce, detailed the book club incident in stark words. The room went silent, the air heavy. Mr. Pierce's face tightened as he watched, his pen pausing over his notebook. Kaylee sat up, her earbuds out, her cheeks flushing. Melissa's hands clenched, her breath sharp. When the final clip ended, Melissa muttering, "She's so needy, it's exhausting." I closed the laptop and looked at Mr. Pierce. "That's not dignity or respect," I said. "That's the opposite." He nodded, his voice measured. Well, this changes things. Unfortunately for Melissa, the estate has very clear ethical clauses. Mistreatment voids the claim. Based on this, the trust's funds will likely go to charity. Melissa shot to her feet, her face red. "This is ridiculous," she screamed, turning on me. "You manipulative old hag. You set this up, didn't you? Recording us, spying like some paranoid freak. You just want to ruin me." Her words hit like blows, but I stood my ground, my cane firm. "Mocking arthritis is one thing, Melissa," I said, my voice low but steady. "Mocking the woman who raised you, that's the part I won't forget." Kaylee stared at the floor, silent for once, her bravado gone. Melissa kept ranting, calling me petty, cruel, ungrateful. Mr. Pierce raised a hand, his tone firm. "Ms. Callister, I suggest you calm down. This evidence is compelling, and I'll be recommending the trust's dissolution. You'll be notified of the final decision." He packed his briefcase and left, promising to follow up. Melissa stormed to the guest room, slamming the door, while Kaylee slunk after her, avoiding my eyes. I sat in my recliner, the laptop still warm, my heart heavy but unbowed. I'd won, but the victory tasted bitter. My daughter, my granddaughter, they weren't just after money. They'd discarded my worth, my love, for it. That night, I added the showdown to my journal. Melissa's screams, Kaylee's silence, Mr. Pierce's verdict. I didn't know if Melissa would try to fight the decision, or if there was more to her scheme, some hidden motive beyond the will. Her rage felt too raw, too personal, but I had my evidence, my dignity, and the truth. I'd call Helen tomorrow, maybe share my story at church, warn others about family who betray. Because if Melissa thought she could break me, she'd forgotten who I was. I'd raised her, loved her, and now I'd outsmarted her. Pain had taught me endurance, and this fight wasn't over. It was just mine to win. Melissa's screams echoed in my mind as I sat in my recliner, the laptop closed, but the weight of the showdown lingering. Her accusations, calling me manipulative, a freak, stung. But Kaylee's silence hurt more, her defiance crumbling into shame. Mr. Pierce's verdict was clear. Their mistreatment voided the inheritance. I'd won, but the victory felt hollow, tainted by the loss of the daughter and granddaughter I'd loved. My journal, filled with their cruelty and my evidence, was proof of my strength. But I wasn't done. This wasn't just about me. It was about every elder dismissed or mocked. A week later, Mr. Pierce called with the final ruling. "The trust has been dissolved," he said. "Melissa and Kaylee are cut out due to the ethical clause violation. The $150,000 is set to go to the Columbus Community Fund, but there's an option. As the conditions beneficiary, you can redirect the funds, keep them, or donate them to a cause of your choice." I leaned back, my cane resting against my knee, the words sinking in. Keep it. The money was tempting. My savings were modest, and arthritis meds weren't cheap, but it was Robert's money, tied to Melissa's betrayal. Holding on to it felt like holding on to their poison. I thought of Kaylee's turtle jab, Melissa's burdened mutterings, and the fire in me grew. I didn't need their money, I needed purpose. "I want to split it," I told Mr. Pierce. "Half to arthritis research, to help people like me keep moving. The other half, to start a local support group for elderly abuse victims, right here in Columbus. I want them to know they're not alone." He paused, his voice warm. "That's a powerful choice, Ms. Callister. I'll handle the paperwork. The trust is officially redirected, and your name is clear." I hung up, a weight lifting. Melissa and Kaylee had moved out the day after the showdown, leaving only a curt note, "We're gone. Good luck." I didn't reply. Their absence left the house quiet, but not empty. I filled it with plans. I called Helen, who connected me with a community center, to launch the support group. I shared my story at church, my voice steady as I warned about family betrayal. People listened, some with tears, others with nods, and I felt a spark of change. Weeks later, the support group met for the first time, a dozen seniors sharing their stories of neglect, mockery, betrayal. I listened, my journal now a tool for healing, not just evidence. The arthritis research donation was confirmed, a small step toward easing others' pain. I stood taller, my cane a badge of endurance, not weakness. I looked out my window at the Ohio spring, the world moving on. Melissa and Kaylee were gone, their inheritance lost, but I'd gained something greater: clarity, purpose, strength. I might have arthritis, I said to myself, a smile breaking through, but my spine has never been stronger. The fight had cost me family, but it gave me a voice, one I'd use to lift others. And that, I knew, was just as worth more than any dollar amount. Has anyone ever tried to use you like a pawn in their game? Let's talk about it in the comments. If you've ever been mocked, ignored, or underestimated because of age or illness, I want you to remember this: your kindness is not weakness, your silence is not submission, and your pain deserves respect. Subscribe for more stories that speak to the heart, and tell me in the comments what country you're watching from. Let's make respect louder than mockery.